Welcome back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. In today's video, we are going to add the next 20 creature cards with a converted mana cost of 1 into our Momir Vig Cube. What's up, MTGBC? That is the MTG Burgeoning community. Welcome back to the return of our ongoing Momir Vig Cube series. Now, if you've forgotten or are just unfamiliar with the goals and purposes of this series, you can search in the description below for a link to MTG Burgeoning's introduction to the Momir Vig Cube. And while you're fishing down below, you can also click the link to Cube Cobra, where you can view the entirety of the cube as it stands right now. We are beginning the second half of filling this 1,500 card cube. That's right, MTGBC. We're 750 cards in, and now we begin the second half of that venture. So let's get right to 20 more cards with a mana value of 1 going into our Momir Vig Cube. And our first one is Metallic Sliver. It's a 1/1 sliver that hopefully can get boosted by any other slivers you might happen to summon onto your side of the battlefield. Next up, we have the Mist-Cloaked Herald. This cannot be blocked, so it may take a lot of swings to bring an opponent's life total down to 0, because each opponent begins the game of Momir Vig with 24 life. However, if you have any power boosting abilities from any of the other creatures you summon to your side of the table, then Mist-Cloaked Herald could end up becoming one of the most valuable 1-drops in the entire cube. Number 3, we have the Maw Conscripts, going old school back to the days of Tempest. This 2/2 cannot attack unless we have successfully cast a creature spell this turn. So, for the purposes of this guy, as long as you're summoning a copy of a creature from the Momir Vig Cube onto your side of the battlefield, then you can send the Maw Conscripts into combat. Number 4, staying with our Mog 1-drops, we have the Mog Fanatic, a 1/1 that we can sack to deal 1 point of damage to any target. We can definitely pull off some great combat chicanery with that fantastic goblin. Next up at the quarter point, we have Mold Adder, a 1/1 fungus snake that whenever an opponent casts a blue or black spell, we may put a +1/+1 counter on Mold Adder. And we will. The only concern here is that all creatures are summoned randomly from the cube. So you could have Mold Adder on the battlefield for the entirety of the game and not put one +1/+1 counter on it. Although that seems to be unrealistic, it is a possibility. Alright, next, and going back to mono red, we have the Monastery Swiftspear, 1/2 haste. And that's going to be all here because the prowess ability of this human monk will not get triggered in Momir Vig. This is all about creatures. There are no instants, there are no sorceries, there are no non-creature spells in this format. So the best that you're getting is a 1/2 with haste on turn 1, which really isn't that bad. Number 7, we have what could end up becoming the most powerfully, not the most powerfully, the most powerful 1-drop in the entire cube, just based upon its activated ability. Here we have Mother of Runes, a 1/1 that we can turn sideways to give creature we control protection from a color of our choice until end of turn. Offensive purposes, defensive purposes, Mother of Runes can create a lot of headaches for our opponents, particularly in a format that, like I said just a moment ago, does not have instant or sorcery removal. Alright, next up, creature number 8. We're going back to mono red for Mountain Goat, a 1/1 mountain walker. So if your opponent has a mountain, this little goat's going to walk all over it to the tune of being unblockable. Number 9, our second colorless creature, we have Mere Mind Servant. This is a 1/1 that we can pay 2 and tap to shuffle our library. Perhaps we have a scry effect or know what's on top of our library, and maybe we need a different type of land in order to activate one of the abilities of our creatures. We can use Mind Servant's ability here. This little mirror can shuffle our library and hopefully get the land that we need on top of our library. All right, the halfway point is there. Next up, another colorless edition. This time it is Mere Scrapling. 1/1, we can sacrifice this dude to put a +1/+1 on counter. We can put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So again, combat shenanigans are afoot, and we can definitely make sure that one of our creatures ends up on the good side of a block. Creature number 12, we have the Narnum Renegade, a 1/2 death touch that will get a +1/+1 counter on it when it enters the battlefield if a permanent we control left the battlefield this turn. That may be a little tricky of a proposition because you would have to try to either make sure you sacrifice one of your creatures to some kind of an ability or send one of your creatures into combat and have it die. And how could you possibly know out of 200 different 1-drops that the Narnum Renegade would come down and get that +1/+1 counter? So I think more realistically, you can think of the Narnum Renegade as a 1/2 with death touch. Next up in our first mono black edition of this video, we have Night Market Lookout. It's a 1/1, and when it becomes tapped, each opponent loses 1 life and we gain 1 life. And in a format like Momir Vig Cube, where every opponent, when every player begins the game with 24 life, any kind of peripheral life loss or life gain effects could be instrumental in claiming victory at the table. Next, we have the Nimble Mongoose. It's 1/1. It has Shroud. And if we can get 7 or more lands into our graveyard, because it has the threshold mechanic, Nimble Mongoose will get +2/+2. So at the best, we've got a 3/3 with Shroud. That's it. In the early game, I'm not sure that that's going to get the boost it's going to need to be necessarily a stalwart in combat. But hey, it's a 1-drop. We can only get so powerful. Speaking of which, we have our first multicolored drop of this event, and it is Nipgwillian. And here we have a 1/1 hag. Yeah, that's what it says. It's a 1/1 hag with lifelink. So as long as we can swing in unimpeded with this hag, we can definitely get on the favorable outcome of draining our opponents for a life and making sure we gain one of those lives right back. All right, back-to-back multicolored 1-drops here. This next creature we can consider being just a placeholder until another creature is developed that will be, let's say, a little more appropriate for Momir Vig. Here we have the Niv-Magus Elemental. It's a 1/2 elemental, and each instant we can exile an instant or sorcery spell we control to put 2 +1/+1 counters on this creature. Now, like I said a couple of times already in this video, there are no instants and there are no sorceries in Momir Vig. What this did was just fill a symmetrical need, as we needed to have 25 multicolored 1-drops included into this cube. There were only 25 multicolored creatures that cost 1 mana in Magic's history at the time of constructing this cube. Now, in the future, if another creature that is its hybrid colors, or even if we can get a different type in there, it will definitely take the place of Niv-Magus Elemental as soon as Wizards decides to create it. But for right now, you're going to summon a 1/2 vanilla right to the battlefield. All right, our third consecutive multicolored creature, we have Odious Trow, a 1/1 that we can pay 1 and any combination of a green or a black to regenerate him. Don't overlook the fact that regeneration could be a very, very important mechanic in a format such as Momir Vig. All right, next up, we're going back to mono green with Old Growth Dryads. Here we have a 1-drop that's 3/3. However, when it ETBs, each opponent may search their library for a basic land and put it onto the battlefield tapped. So you're letting your opponents ramp ahead of you in order to summon more powerful creatures from the cube, all at the expense of putting a 3/3 down onto the battlefield the first time you summon the creature from the cube if you're only doing it for 1 mana. Ooh, a pretty steep price to pay, or perhaps not. That is up to you. And of course, the roll of the die. All right, creature number 18 here, back to another multicolored edition. We have Una's Gate Warden. We had a 2/1 flying, defending, withering fairy soldier. So you're not going to send this into combat, but it will block and act as a deterrent because Wither will deal combat damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counter. So even if somebody decides to attack us with a 2/3, that opponent's creature is going to end up becoming a 0/1. All right, creature number 19, a mono white edition. We have Order of the Stars, a 0/1 with Defender. When it ETBs, we choose a color, and Order of the Stars has protection from the chosen color. So this could have a lot of whiff ability, or this could be a stalwart blocking any kind of creatures that do not have evasion of the color you so choose. And lastly, creature number 24, this video, we have Pelt Collector, 1/1. Whenever another creature we control ETBs or dies, if that creature's power is greater than Pelt Collector's, we'll put a +1/+1 counter on this. Kind of like a double evolve mechanic here for this Elf Warrior. As long as Pelt Collector has 3 or more +1/+1 counters on it, it will have trample. So if you are fortunate enough to summon a copy of this to your side of the battlefield on your first turn, it seems reasonable to think that each creature that you summon after it should have a power greater than Pelt Collector, meaning that you should be able to continue to put +1/+1 counters on this until you have a pretty sizable trampling menace. And there you have it, MTG BC. Cards number 751 to 770 have now been included into our Momir Vig Cube. Let me know in the comment section below which ones are your favorites. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic.